This is a quick demo of a little tool that I've written to help with generating OOO network isolation templates. It's in a pretty rough state right now. You'll probably see some things as I'm going through the demo that don't look quite right, uh, but it does actually work. So before I spend a bunch of time, polishing all of the rough edges, I just want to get some feedback and see if people think that this is something I should pursue or just leave it be. Um, And so you'll notice that it's written as a standalone tool instead of as part of the UI, the web UI that is. And there were a few reasons for that. One is that the web UI doesn't have access to the file system, so it doesn't have any way to actually write out the resulting template files. Now, you could probably get around this by writing the files or at least uploading the files directly into Swift. Um, that does have some drawbacks of its own, though, because then you can't see what was actually generated and you have no ability to tweak it if you're trying to do some sort of a more exotic network configuration. So um, there's that. There's also the fact that I already know the tooling that I used to build this, excuse me, and so I was able to knock it out in basically a day's worth of development time, whereas I would have had to learn the entire UI. I realize that's not a super strong argument, but there you go. That's my logic. Feel free to shoot holes in it if you like. So anyway, what I'm going to be demoing today is just some very simple network isolation templates. I'm actually going to replicate some templates that I had written by hand a few months ago. And the reason I'm using these particular templates as kind of a basis for the demo is that they're very simple. They only involve the control plane and the external network. So I didn't have to wire up everything into the UI before I could actually come up with some usable templates. Um, and so what these templates will be is basically two NICs on the controller, one of them bridged, one on the control plane, one on the external network, and then on the compute node, just a bridged interface that'll be on the control plane. So as you can see, about as simple as you can get and still be doing network isolation. So a quick walk around the interface. Up here at the top, we have some buttons. They can be used to add the various different elements for OS net config, and right now it's just supporting OVS bridges. We can certainly add Linux bridge support later, but like I said, it's a rough tool. Um, and then below that, you can see our 5 standard node types, and next to that, a couple of lists that will have things like the interfaces, bridges, VLANs, and what have you. The top level interfaces and bridges will be on the left one, and the uh, you know interfaces that are part of a bridge or the VLANs on a bridge will be in the far right. Next to that, you have some configuration for the various items. Not all of these things make sense for all of the interfaces or bridges or what have you. Um, Again, it's a rough tool. We can clean that up in the future. Below that, we have some more kind of global configuration options. These are basically values that were pulled out of network environment.yaml, the one that you would normally have to write by hand based on our documentation. Hopefully this is a little bit simpler, and it's also smart enough so that it will only include the values for the networks that are actually used up above. Um, so it simplifies the network environment file a little bit. And then below that, just the generate button. Um, so we'll go ahead and get started. The controller in this case is just an interface and a bridge. And then the bridge needs an interface, and the bridge will be the external network. And it's basically as simple as that. There's not really anything else we need to configure. You can see this NIC was set as the primary for the bridge. Uh, this is one of those cases where the network doesn't really matter because it doesn't make sense for a bridged NIC. And then you can see we've set primary it doesn't make sense in this case because it's a top-level NIC, so of course it's the primary, and this one's on the control plane network. And then we'll do the compute, and there again, just a bridge with one interface and all on the control plane, so that's fine. Then we'll go down here below and go ahead and fill in some values that reflect the environment that I've deployed. Let's see. And I'm going to make my Neutron external bridge BREX because that's what I've done above here, and I'm not using VLANs, so I don't need the extra functionality that the empty bridge gives you. I don't know whether it's necessary to set that, but it was set in the original templates, so for consistency I'm keeping it. Alright, so we can go ahead and generate, and now we'll go take a look at what we created. So this is the templates. We can see network environment, and you can see we've set the NIC configs up here, and then these are all of the values that we set in the UI earlier. Notice that internal API is not included because we didn't configure any internal APIs. Then we'll go ahead and take a look at the network isolation file. It's very simple because we're only adding the external network, so just the 3 entries that you see here. And now the NIC configs themselves. You can see for the ones that we didn't actually configure, we're just getting an empty net config here. That will probably not work. Obviously you would want to configure that if you were going to deploy one of these extra node types. But that's not really the interesting part. We'll take a look at the controller YAML. You can see all the parameters, and then down here the resources. And you can see here is our interface that we added first. That's NIC1. And then here's our OVS bridge with a NIC2 member and on the external interface. Also, you can see that up here. And then up here, just the control plane, as we had configured it in there. You can tell this is not formatted ideally. That's because I'm using the YAML safe dump function, and it's just writing everything out in a random order. There may be things we can do to improve that a little bit, but it does work. The data is all in the right places at least, so it's maybe not quite as pretty as the handwritten ones, but I don't think that's the end of the world. Then we'll also go ahead and take a look at the compute YAML. Here again, just the one OVS bridge with the one NIC. This time it's just configured to have the bridge directly on the control plane. And yeah, that's pretty much all there is to it. So we'll go ahead and, through the magic of television, I have an environment already set up using basically these templates, or some that were generated identically to this. So we'll take a look at that and maybe look at the endpoint list. And you can see our public APIs are on that 8.1.1.10, and the internal ones are on the control plane, as you would expect. I don't really want to record an entire ping test, but take my word for it, it passed the ping test. So you can see these templates are working. There's a lot more validation that could be added to the tool to make sure that you haven't duplicated any VLAN IDs or subnet ranges or what have you. Like I said, there's plenty more that could be done, but I thought that once the tool was in a semi-functional state, I would send this out and get some feedback. So if you have any comments or questions, hit me up on the mailing list or IRC, and thanks for watching.